Hey, it is your buddy, Peace and Harmony with you here today. Much love going out to all the beautiful, empowered harmonizers. We are zooming in and focusing in on a great viewer question that is to go a little bit more in depth on what it means to be resilient or not resilient. In other words, when you come into contact with a toxic person, a toxic boss, a toxic environment, when it's become too much, basically, whatever feelings you've had before previously are beginning to change, metamorphosize, and you are going through a shift of feeling, a shift of consciousness, and a shift of awareness. When it comes to really understanding, not fearing, notice Peace and Harmony said coming to understand what does it really mean to understand and clear what is a toxic relationship, a toxic habit that's becoming, it's dulling you out, it's giving you chronic headaches, boredom. You're feeling that this person isn't all upfront with you. These are toxic, which can create sort of a paranoia and anxiety, which doesn't resolve and then leads to more depression. And this can become very frightening. This is in the fear category when you're dealing with someone toxic. Toxic meaning not just overwhelming, and not just sort of assailing you, because that's really what they do. It's an emotional aggression. When someone is releasing a lot of negativity, that becomes toxic. And that can become very frightening because it's an overwhelm to the system. No matter who you are, if you're a male, a female, a child, a teenager, an adult, whether this is a family member, a spouse, or a coworker, or a colleague, or wherever you might encounter this experience or individual, as I parallel, a lot of these can parallel oftentimes businesses that are run with certain philosophies or culture which are toxic, and it spills over into their company, their products, and everything else. And it's just not but they will oftentimes deceive people and get them sort of hooked and addicted, even though it is not healthy or beneficial for them. So that is problematic, and people will experience this, in the beginning without their knowing. So they're not aware that they're being violated. They're not aware that they're being betrayed. This will corrupt your sense of trust. When you have a sneaky suspicion, when you're walking on tippy toes, eggshells, your heartbeat is in your throat, you've got, butterflies in your stomach, and they turn into bowling balls in your stomach, and you're just not right. You're living, in an agitated state. And a lot of people think that this means that they're, living the high life, or maybe if they're high energy, hey, everything worth having is worth fighting for. You might have either role models or beliefs that then keep you in a toxic situation or relationship too long, such as we see with someone who is psychopathic or narcissistic, someone who has a pathological sense of self-importance coupled with a lack of empathy. So in other words, these are the people who will just have their way with you, have their will with you, do whatever, trample over whatever it might be of yours, a word, they'll trample over your emotions, they'll trample over your behaviors, they'll cut you off, they'll raise their voice, they'll raise their eyebrows, they'll raise whatever, and it kind of assail you. So this is a toxic behavior. And a lot of people then who have encountered this for some period of time have then identified themselves as weak, meek, untrustworthy, not smart enough, they're not quite getting it, and this leads to self-doubt, and then sort of really adhering an adhesion to the abuser, if you will, to try to have them solve what the wrong is. But see, the abuser sets the wrong into motion, and the abuser will not change. So a lot of people, meaning that they'll become more pronounced, more rigid, more aggressive with time. They don't have a problem with their judgment on people. They certainly have the right to all their opinions, but it doesn't mean you have to be damaged or held back or have your life hindered anyway because someone has a opinion about some person, place, or thing that really doesn't have anything to do with you, but they make it seem as if it's all about you. So these are the people who are coming out of the ego. When someone's coming out of their ego, they're pushy, they're mean, they're always they can be irresponsible, meaning it's your fault. Why did you say this? Why do you do this? And then certain why do you always? These, which are of course have nothing to do with truth, but they can be these vast and sweeping accusations that are just meant to basically do away with whatever it is you're trying to communicate. And that's not fair or right to you. You see, but the egoist, the narcissist, psychopath, this is how they get things done for themselves. So they have to take, this is just how they are. It's nothing that you have done to agitate them. See, that's the problem with children, with spouses, siblings, or even in the workplace. When you're up against a narcissist or a psychopath, because they don't really have a good sense of and a grasp of their own emotions and how they are to people, and if people have spoken up, they literally do not hear, don't want to hear, don't care to hear. So it's going to be an exercise of futility. But oftentimes, this will lead into these sort of egoist people will require an equal negative energy, to combat. So it'll bring out a negative in you. It'll bring out aggression, anger, unhappiness, a frown, a smile, not a smile. A smile, your happiness is nowhere to be found. Maybe it's down Route 57, you don't know where it is, but you better go find it because somebody left it over the side of the road, kicked it into the river, and you got to go after it now. See, that is your self-respect. That is trust. That should be your ongoing experience of yourself. Should be a sense of trust, a sense of comfort, a sense of knowing, and a sense of security. You shouldn't have a chronic sense of fear, agitation, worry that you're going to put a toe on something that shouldn't have a toe, or make a noise or a squeak, or do something, or just get ignored for no reason that will then leave you searching, why did I deserve this? Why am I such an idiot? You ask yourself then all these questions, whether they're vocalized or not. This creates a very negative inner rapport pattern and erupts and corrodes away at your ability to listen to your intuition and act on it, because the fear is sort of, circumventing that. It's sort of, it's in the way. And what's in the way is the way. So meaning you have to seek to understand and not be afraid, and be willing and have courage enough to see the difference. But it's very difficult to live by self-trust, self-belief, self-love, self-deserve, I am, all the time if you're not used to being treated that way, or your muscle memory is not used to sort of behaving and moving yourself in your environment in that manner, because it'll begin to have an emotional effect on you, because energy, emotions, negative emotions, people's anger, hostility, blame, judgment, criticism, belittling, problems, issues, do you notice how a lot of it is pushing the negative outward? Yet they have the appearance of they're an authority, so you have to then attend to this, and are not allowed to reflect, because it requires an immediacy. It requires a complacency. It requires a complicity, which means you have to go along. you have to be, you have to deal, you have to cope, you have to be what you think is resilient in the name of love, but you don't realize that this is boundary violation. This is havoc making in, the trust and comfort and peace and harmony of your being. See, when there's toxicity, that means that there's an undue, imbalanced, unhealthy amount of something, be it energy, looks, feelings, sensations, dreams, events that you have experienced and are kind of like an emotional rumbling. It's going to erupt, and you think, well, maybe it'll be different, and you give more and more slack because the authority, because the narcissist is charming, because of the wonderful things they say they are, or, do you see what I'm saying? It requires this submission, and, you're submitting to an external source of control, which is not in your best interest. So a lot of people are not experienced, have been encouraged, have had reinforcement or had support to learn to trust, to learn to be comfortable, to learn to not live in doubt, to be the antithesis, to live in belief, faith, and confidence, and assurance, and not in fear. So, but if you are around this, then you're going to have this as a replacement state instead of, your natural, organic, just okayness, with meaning homeostasis. What they call in science is homeostasis, which means balance. Believe it or not, your body does know how to regulate itself if you allow. But if it's continually subject to things in the environment that are overwhelm, noise overwhelm, energy and motion overwhelm, which means too much coming at you to process and being asked to just go along. There's no input from you. You're not allowed to contribute, share your feelings, much less your feelings or what your dreams are. So do you see, it'll slowly get truncated until you get that feeling that something has to change. The time this cannot go on any longer, and you can just be, and this might be a gradual thing, but what you have to learn is to trust the process. To trust the process, which means peace and harmony. If I work on a number of these things, we have these discussions, you make these distinctions, meaning what is trust within yourself feel like, and what does fear feel like? So if you can think about an environment, so that's non-toxic, so that you trust, that you're comfortable in, that you can take your time, you can pay attention to your senses, and you're sort of got, yourself an intuitive sense of knowing where you're going in the place or how you're handling things. You might be learning, you might be slow, you might back up, but you don't have a problem with the pace or what you're doing. You are just enjoying yourself. That is peace and harmony. That is, going out into the world and learning. And then learning to connect with people from that basis versus like, I don't know if you're going to like me, but if I do a song and a dance and a flip, maybe that'll get me my foot in the door. All these people have to, turn themselves inside out, and they think that this is in the name of growth when it's really in the name of oftentimes not a true vision that they have for themselves, but it's more of a fantasy, meaning, or really what can be sort of a lie state, meaning it's a non-reality. The 4 agreements: be impeccable with your word. Impeccable with your word. So meaning if you've had a lot of this back and forth, you have not learned, to be impeccable with your word, or even feel that you could, or you have this strength. Well, how could you know your strength if this was never encouraged or brought out, or you've experienced this. How, some people have been, imbued with this for so long, or it's been so intense, and that they're sort of beside themselves. The anxiety, you cannot think and make rational decisions when you're in this toxically, either overexcited state, meaning when this person has you, so excited that you've got this relationship and you're going all in and you're giving and you're, and you don't realize, you don't kind of see the red flags, even though you're like, and you just, but, otherwise everything else is so good about this gal or this guy or this job or this coworker or what have you. And then, you stay a little bit longer and you're like, you begin to say, I got to back it up. And hopefully you do that sooner than later, because a lot of people, like Dr. David Hawkins, Power versus Force, this is, they're very aggressive or forceful people. And this is how they navigate their power. So if someone is coming at you with a negative energy, it's usually you're going to mimic them in like energy. So if someone begins attacking you, you're going to defend and justify. If you have to defend and justify yourself, that person does not support you or does not get you or does not trust in your decision making. And if you have never been around that, or learned to have trust, what does trust feel like? Can I trust my decision making? Can I think clearly now the rain is gone? Or even if the rain is there, how can I still think clearly? And I trust. So what does trust feel like? When you're in an environment that you trust, let's just keep it simple. So a place that you trust or where you really like, or you can just be at ease. And you don't have to worry. You don't have to feel you're going to, anyone's going to backstab you, or you're just okay, and it might be alone or it might be with someone. But what does that trust feel like when you're like, I've got this, I know what I'm doing. And in fact, what do you know really well? I know how to make a cup of coffee, even with all the varieties. Maybe you're still mishmashing it up. What do you know how to do really well? I can tie a shoelace. What are the things? So this is trust. You're like, I know I can do. So that feeling, like, I know this. I know this. And, that's confidence. So that is what is the subject of the toxic. That's where they're going to shoot the poison arrow in the, I've got this, but they'll the way that they navigate the relationship in the beginning is so that you pay attention more to them, their needs, how they're leading, which is usually what they call the love bombing phase, which becomes very wonderful and all sorts of good things. But then there becomes the discard, degrade and discard, which means as soon as they're sort of done whatever they needed at that moment, a place to hide out, a job, whatever it is that they were there for, and they're kind of on their way, and it doesn't make any sense. The communications, the sacrifices you might have made, and it leaves you very bewildered, disoriented. This is not, and then feeling lack of trust for the world. The world is no good. This, and you start feeling all this, then they call that the dark night of the soul. Well, that it's not, you don't have to go there. If so, let's kind of go out of the dark night. Let's just come into the light a little bit. Talk to people who are kind of like there with your humanity and aren't afraid to listen or aren't afraid to hear, where you need specific things. And you don't have to be beside yourself to communicate this. See, that's where the narcissist and a psychopath can be a very poor role model, because they'll exhibit a lot of toxic behaviors, toxic habits, especially in relating to others, in relating to employment, in relating to money, in relating to caring, even relating to care of the earth. they oftentimes just don't give a darn. They just don't. And if you're around these people enough, you might think, oh, well, wouldn't that be just so nice to not have to care and just to, well, actually, you have a heart. You do care. So that's okay. It just means that, you're not a good fit for an abuser. It's not, because you begin to see right through things. You get to, that's when your senses start kind of coming together and you're able to see things for how they are. This is to seek understanding and not fear, but not understanding of them first. Seek understanding of yourself. Have you been putting others first way too long? Are you like, everybody else after me, let me hold the door? Are you the guy who's, always picking up something? Let me do this. Let me work on that. Let me throw you a hand. I've got this. I've got you. That's your strength. And then they took advantage of that. Of course, that's what narcissists do. That's what psychopaths do. Here's your strength. Oh, goody, goody gumdrops. Here comes my supply. Hopping down the bunny trail. Here comes a happy guy or a happy girl, ready to share the business, have the kids, pick them up from their last wound, give them a home, whatever it is, dates, romance, whatever. And it can be very fantasy-like. It can be very much like you're floating on, cloud 9, cloud 10, cloud 47, and you're like, oh my gosh, this is the answer to everything. There's little things that they do, their charm and charisma. That's not all a bad thing. But when it's used like an emotional Houdini to sort of take your sense of center and focus and your sense of trust outside of yourself, that's really too depleting. You're paying way too much a cost for this relationship. It's time to look at the emotional bankruptcy that they will put you in. That is not a sign of love and caring, that you've stuck it out to the point where you're emotionally and spiritually bankrupt, and you feel that you don't have your equal. Well, maybe because an abuser is not your equal. That's an okay lesson to learn. Don't worry about it. In fact, just say, okay, I'm going to seek to understand myself. I'm not a good fit with this toxic culture, person, situation, and that doesn't make me a bad person. See, they'll blame you. They'll interpret you. Oh, they'll give you a big label. Oh, you're a bad person. You're a troublemaker. You're whatever. You can put your comments down below. You're whatever, too much. You're this, and it's just because, you're kind of there, and you might sort of not be putting up with that, tolerating being abused. And to them, they're not gonna say, oh, I'm sorry, let's back this up. Was it something that I did? You're gonna find yourself doing that for them, but to the point where you're bowing yourself out of everything, and you don't even have your head up anymore. You're always, you've been making, it's hard to come to terms, but you might have been making too many excuses for this person or this situation, and seeing too much of your shortcomings, okay, and put up with that because that matches your own belief system. So for people who don't have a good, strong sense of self, they'll get really swept away for a longer period of time, until you begin to see it for what it is and realize, that, like as a psychopath might say, when they take advantage of people, they'll think that, everyone assumes that that others are just like them, especially when a narcissist or a psychopath, that's how they get you in their grips. I'm just like you. You're starting a business. I'm a beginner, or I'm a savant, or I'm the best there is. I'm elite. I'm head of this. I'm, and they'll get really intimate very quickly. It'll feel like, oh my gosh, this person is just so easy to get along with. And then, and then of course, why don't I get you lunch? Why don't I get you chocolates? Why don't, you come over to my place? Why don't I, or whatever it is that they're doing can be like the complete balm to your needs. I haven't had anyone make me feel this good in 17 years, and here they are. It's always, everything was, I was so down on my luck, and then, at the corner, at the job, at the cafeteria, people can generally remember, some of their very intense moments. It's very intense. So, don't mistake intense with positive. You know, it's okay to understand yourself and say, oh, let me take a step back. Let me hold some space for myself here. And let me, like Peace and Harmony said, let me experience trust for a moment. And this is when everyone else isn't yelling all the negative stuff, or you're doing the yelling for them. That's when you know you've been around a narcissist or a psychopath long enough, is you're beating yourself up. You're doing their job for them. Hey, why don't I just sabotage myself in order to further help you as our relationship progresses? It'll regress you. It will not strengthen you. And people then are so used to, then accustomed, habituated, and conditioned to this, sort of stepped down, dumbed down, uncared for, unloved for, no joy, no health, no warmth in the relationship, that they don't feel like they can rekindle the spark, or they even have that, ability to get their heart going, or even feel that way anymore. They feel so forlorn. Their mood has become a temperament, and then their temperament, repeated over time based on the negative role models, have become an unhappiness. They don't like where they are, how they're behaving, what they have, what they're doing. It's okay. It's time for it. It's okay to change. I mean, that's what it's all about. But it's better to come from a place of safety and trust and confidence and knowing, than being pushed, bullied, having to be or something that is good enough to meet, the demands or needs or attention grabbing requirements of a narcissist or a psychopath. So if you're habituated and conditioned to that, then you might need to really unplug and replug into something that's more healthier, more sentient, more humane, and detox emotionally, meaning for the happiness for yourself, because then there's going to be a lot of B states, as well as a lot of other things. The way you move your body, what you eat, what you purchase, what you wear, what you study, all your decisions, at that very foundational level. If it hasn't come from that place of trust, it's because you haven't allowed it to open, or it hasn't been allowed to. So, the narcissist or psychopath would very much, have you stay shut, unhappy, in the dark, as long as they get what their needs are, their conveniences are, and like does not have to be, returned according to them, but you always, get caught up in this trap. So this is a very uncomfortable way of being, living, and like seeing yourself, because oftentimes you're not seeing yourself accurately. People get negative body images. They don't feel like manly enough, female enough. They've been demasculated or whatever, forced to work too hard if you're a woman. All these different things will throw you out of balance. You just have to become reflective on these. So what I recommend in the book that I'm working on, and of course I've got my hands in my stunning purple cast here, and working on like an energy plan, and doing things that really sort of get you out of the detox, is to really get out of the detox, which means you cannot simultaneously stay in the relationship and sort of detox at the same time. Because you have to we're going to have to get to some really foundational, what might be remedial feeling states for you to understand and identify with. If you've now identified with too many negative labels, this, that, whatever it is. Those have nothing to do with reality. Those are oftentimes the conveniences that somebody has, used, and that does not equate you, describe you, or your I am. So you have to really look at being on top of your own energy, your own currency, your own I am, your own feel state. So oftentimes it's very difficult to relax and then come to just like an unflinching, in other words, people always have their legs crossed, they're this, they're, versus just sitting with their feet on the ground and, just an open body position. People are always, usually with like dukes up, especially now with the phone. They've always got dukes up, or they've got, whatever I'm listening to is more important than you, sort of messages going on. So look at your body language. Much of communication is body language. Linguists and social theorists and people who study like language and communication suggest that 97% of communication is body language. And that's where you hold your feelings, your emotions, and really how you carry yourself, your carriage, how you how you hold your head up high, or do you hunch down, are you or are you giving your solar plexus, your I am, a chance to be a strength? Can you feel a strength there, or does it just feel yuck? That'll be a good indicator and clue about how, toxic your environment is, or is becoming, or this person. When you feel a boundary violation or a standard violation, when they're not acknowledging you, validating you, and they're just sort of spewing out their own emotional garbage onto you, you don't have to take it. You don't have to deflect it, but you can say, internally, that ain't mine. You don't have to throw it away, but that's not going here, and then wherever, let the universe recycle it. You do not have to take that negativity. A lot of people do not find out until several years into their profession, their relationship, their family, that they absorb way too much negativity because they're trying to be a good support. Well, if you're a good support person, wouldn't you be a good support for a person who needs support? Well, if you're a good support person and here comes a narcissist or a psychopath who needs support, don't you see how in the beginning they'd scoop you up like a sack of potatoes and say, I'm taking you home? Do you see what I'm saying? So you have to kind of redefine and say, whoa, I've got something here. I've got my own energy here. I've got my own value. And this is different and distinct. And it's better if I feel this in a sense of trust and safety, and respect and knowing and confidence, rather than constantly being shaken, cut off at the knees, cut off at the heart, cut off at the wherever, with snide comments, false promises, things that they didn't happen, dreams that didn't get recognized. Pretty soon you have to say, enough is enough. Today begins the pure. Today begins the authenticity. Today begins now. And that is okay. Don't worry about it. Coming to trust is going to be a very important lesson. So as you go out through, through your day and this week, I really want you to reflect on, what do I feel really experience trust, and what do I really know what I'm doing? In other words, when am I in the flow? Making your bed, maybe you're a great barbecuer, maybe you're great at making homemade something, and you just know how to do it, and you're just really great. I mean, you have the experience. That is confidence in knowing. You don't have to explain or justify yourself. That is what confidence feels like. So when I talk about my emotement, and you talk about knowing, this is the foundation that you get knocked off of. This then leads you toppling into insecurity, self-doubt, lack of trust, and then lack of happiness, because fear will only emanate from that. You'll have a lot of struggle. It'll take so much more work for you to try to do things the other way and live in lack of trust, live in bewilderment, live in suspicion, live in concern, live in fear. I mean, anybody signing up for that? Is that what you want in your blueprint of your dream place, wherever you are, your dream home right now? Are you stitching that into the fabric of what you're doing? Or are you saying, no, I want trust and I want safety and I want serenity and I want peace and I want to be able to be okay with this and I want to elevate and I want to come from a strength and I want to come from a purity and from that confidence, and I shouldn't have to explain and justify, and then and then bring that into situations where previously you have experienced a lack of confidence, purely usually for fear, which is false evidence appearing real. A lot of people, when they're in toxic situations, they find it very hard to keep a balanced lifestyle, to do things like go out for social activities without feeling embarrassed. They're afraid someone's going to ask them how they're doing, and oh boy, there goes a can of worms. You're not telling them, we're going on vacation, we're going on a cruise, and we just built this. You're like, I got this going on, So it's, then people will become inhibited socially because they're too ashamed, because what they see, other people might not understand, or like, oh God, I don't want to have anything to do with that. I don't have time to listen. And so you find yourself without, isolated. Okay, this can be, and then you lose contacts, you lose networking, you lose faith in human relationships. This is when it gets really severe. It gets very severe. It gets very scary, but I'm here to tell you right here, right now, that oftentimes is of a narcissist or a psychopath, undoing of you. Basically, it's not the doing of you, it's the undoing of you. So don't allow yourself to be made undone. Just don't allow, and so if you have an image then of yourself, you don't have to be smiling, making a muscle, whatever, your good side, bad side, just to be is enough. How many people is that news? Raise your hands. That just for you to be as you are is enough. How many? I mean, I have to do this. I have to do that. I have to. So you're coming from. You have to really look at it. I tell you, we really dissect this. Because if you have those feelings, that's coming from a lack of self-trust. And that is taught. That is part, I feel, of learned helplessness and learned hopelessness is, you're taught not to trust. And listen within. That's also known as, trusting, having security, being centered, being able to do your thing, have your mojo on, do whatever. You are in your element. You should be spending much more of your day in your relationships in that. But a lot of people have not allowed that, or the people in their environment have made it nearly impossible for that to be experienced. Hence, we have the recovery date and the elopement. It's very important. This is so silly, peace and harmony. I can just remember to do this. I don't need to write anything down. No, you won't. You need to write these things down. You need a calendar. You need to see your day, your life, your positivity, your potential, your becoming for what it is, not through the lens, the darkening of anything else. It's not the undoing, okay? If they've allowed that, you will realize that you do have certain trust experience states, and we need to really capitalize. We really need to expand, expound, call that into being in all the senses. So, and I talk about that in terms of multisensory and sort of quantum energy healing, which is an energetic healing, which is where you're in that space where you're not having to judge, be concerned. Am I doing this wrong? What are they going to think? I'm going to be jumped on. They're not going to answer. They're going to think this and this of me. All those other wasteful thoughts are like a pollutant emotionally. They will clog you up. They will block you. They will hinder you. And you'll say, I want, and you don't know what you want. And you wonder why. And you're not able to get a harness on everything. You're not able to saddle the horse. You're not able to get leverage. You're not able to get things going. You're not able to ride off into the sunset because you can't quite see the sunset. The beauty doesn't catch your eye anymore. You don't have, and see, that is where you have to be, and then allow life to meet you at that trust state, and not to be taken advantage, and to protect and nurture that trust state. Self-trust is what is really the target, I would say, of, especially on the psychopath, that is the target of the corruption, or the target of what they see to break down in others, is that sort of internal clue bond, sort of that emotional, natural, what we call homeostasis, your own natural chemistry. Okay? Coffee, how many different substances do you need? Sugar, coffee, okay? So this can all get thrown off balance. Your own natural kilter can be really severed, and you can have a sort of a disconnect in these relationships, because they sort of remove that mechanism from being intact. In other words, they'll sort of dissect it. They'll sort of disconnect it. They'll snip it off. They'll make sure the connection doesn't fuse. They'll make sure that certain communications that they do will seek to steer things according to the way they want you to think. This is very different than your typical relationships. If you study and go to school and go to college, and you're, with a professor and a textbook and your notes, you're learning how to organize things for your own thoughts. So you can learn, that is an experience that is not really all there when you're in a psychopathic relationship. You're not all hands on deck. It's like it's all of their hands on deck. They're going to be getting in the way, giving you a feeling. They're going to be breaking people. They break you down with either, incessant texting, calling, absence, wondering. And, they get people beside themselves. This is toxic. So this is unhealthy. Toxic, in other words, if there was an expired milk from 3 years ago, would you drink that if it was in your refrigerator? Or would that be toxic, cause an upheaval in your system? See, but you can read the date and you can know better. So you have an indicator you can trust, you can find and know it's okay to throw that out. It's very difficult to know what you can do and protect yourself from these types of relationships, because you can't really see the red flags. You can't really see what they're doing. You can't see what they're planning to undo you. They don't share that. They put up a false bravado, a false charisma, a false persona, a false dream, a false promise, a fantasy. And oftentimes then there is something completely different that you expose them. They have a second life, a second identity, a second job. They're not really all this. This is not their resume. This is not their social, whatever it is. This is not where they are. All those things can happen, and they do. And they happen to everyday good people. So you have to realize and then seek to understand that their mechanisms, not necessarily how they think, but how they throw off, and that will destroy or sort of take off caliber, so you have to recalibrate, namely self-trust as a B state. I trust myself. I trust, and then knowing, and then expanding that. So especially in areas where you don't feel comfortable. And by the way, I want to give a huge shout out to those of you who have recently donated to the channel. So good to hear from you. Thank you so much for reaching out. I'm so glad these tools do help. Please do comment, please do donate, and please do help others and, donate to the channel, because it really does help boost the community here. And thank you so much. It really does help, and your support is so well received. So thank you so much. So as we're saying, that trust, so in the multi-sensory, so realize that you might even doubt that you can trust yourself. Oh boy. Okay, peace and harmony. That's too much. Okay. I trust. Then you might just need to say that. I trust, and have a candle. Bring up positive things in your environment. What brings you trust, center, and warm? Me, peace and harmony, I will be lighting a candle or candles. Maybe you have a fireplace. Maybe you're going to build a fireplace. Maybe you're going to build, maybe, I tell you what's really inspiring. If you watch some of the great shows on YouTube, there's this great show called Off Grid with Jake and Nicole. Talk about an industrious, hardworking couple. A great couple who trust each other and they trust themselves unequivocally. Check out their channel. They have all sorts of different videos. I just saw it. I think it was like their 3-year alone in a yurt in the Canadian wilderness. And this guy, builds this guy and girl clear this incredible amount of space, incredible respect for the land, incredible respect for the natural resources, living off grid, meaning detoxing, the ultimate. And then they go and not only do that, but they have a tropical paradise that they're doing now as well. Anyway, and it shows you how they build from the ground up. I mean, clearing the land, cement pouring, hilling their raised beds for all their gardening. They fell in love. I think they had a garden. They met each other gardening. But do you see, it's get healthy in front of you. Get healthy images of, I call that in the book that I'm working on, like, who is your mentor? Or you can have mentors. Who do you like the energy of? The industriousness, the resourcefulness, the way that they are. Maybe it's a religious figure. Maybe it's a musician. Maybe it's someone who has preceded you. Maybe it's a comedian. Maybe it's a family member. Maybe it's someone in your community. Maybe it was a previous teacher. It's very important for you to have a mentor, though, and a template for you to model yourself kinesthetically in the energetic realm as well, to really have full embodied healing in what I call like that multi-sensory. So really looking at all the senses and what you're consuming that will lead to that. So, and looking at that trust state. So, if you say, I really want to really experience more security. I've fallen prey and fallen into the emotional fire, trying to have a communication with a psychopath. They will always win. It's a war of words. They'll talk all over you. They'll always have some other point that they're going to bring up, and they'll always make you dead in the water. But you don't have to enter into the fight. As I always say in previous videos, step out of the boxing ring. Don't put your dukes up. You can seal your mouth and just observe. You don't have to flinch, fail, and react. Just like, a hammer that hits, under the kneecap it's a reflex, okay? These reflexes will damage you emotionally and they'll deplete you energetically. React, It'll cause a lot of tension in the throat. Trying to, you can't breathe and talk at the same time. You're, squeaking your voices out and everything. So, and then putting your trust back within, because people then might find, as they really get along their journey, that they find that they might be guilty of, and not to feel guilty of it, but you're trying to put trust in too many outside people, places, and things, and not enough trust in yourself. And so that might be very commandeering and supportive of other people, but you have to be able to give that to yourself. And that's okay. It's okay to fill up your own cup with with your strength, your love, and your passion. Even if it's been knick-knacked, told, it doesn't matter, it's not important, you're due to whatever, don't worry about it. And if you look at that self-trust, so that is a feeling and a be state. So that I want you to, work on as a check-in point. And do like and have like an energy plan. I picked up this really cool book called Energy Plan. I love the second Energy Plan. But, there's so many things you can do that can help disrupt that self-distrust pattern. Including the most simple things, but people skip over because they still, it's going to be like everything else, peace and harmony. I'm going to have to work so hard. I'll probably fail at it. It's going to require too big a change, peace and harmony. Okay, that's your distrust going, okay? Those are the emanatings, those are the bubbles, those are the ramblings of the fear and the, I don't trust state. And so you have to check that. You have to keep a check and balance in yourself. Emotional check and balance. So even if you have written down emotional check, balance, check, balance. Okay, someone's trying to throw you off. Check. What are you going to do? Check. What is going to be you're going to have a little word, a little sound, and a movement, and then you're just going to come to that be state of trust. So it's got to be a simultaneous. This is called neuroplasticity, rewiring. So the brain has a miraculous ability to grow, heal, and rewire itself. It's called neuroplasticity. That's how we learn new things. And this really is significant so that your body can begin helping you with the healing. This is when we become unconsciously competent, when you're doing and you're healing and you don't have to remind yourself. It already becomes built in and rewired. I'm already going on my recovery date. I'm doing my moment. I'm doing check and balance. So if we look at check and balance from toxicity, check. Okay, you identify it. You can be very clear. There's clarity. That's the crystal. And I like to use examples here. And we're going to write this out. Check, emotional check and balance. Okay, we're going to bring up the paper. Okay. And emotional, and you can write this on your paper. Okay. Okay, so emotional, in my writing with a cast here, emotional check. Balance. Okay, we're going to do a rough grid here. Emotional. Okay, check, balance. Okay, this is a very simple exercise. Peace and harmony is too simple. Okay, good. Check, balance. Check, balance. So here comes toxic, and you have to understand. You can even understand, what is toxic? Toxic. T-O-X-I-C. Who made it famous? Britney Spears? I don't know. Oil spill? Britney Spears? Toxic? Okay. toxic 1 through 20? What is toxic 1 through 20? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Toxic 1 through 20. Okay. What is toxic? According to you. This is not according to Peace and Harmony. Someone, who runs the environmental agency for the Amazon. This is you. What is toxic behavior or toxic sightings or toxic? What is toxic to you? So how do you define it? It's very important to air this stuff out. This is what's all bottled up, commotion. This is what's underneath the self-trust. This is like in the cavern. This is in the bowels. I always love studying the bowels of the library. I always, studied English in college, and I was the bowels of the, mansion. Oh boy, I didn't know a mansion could have bowels. It was just the readings. Oh my God, talk about intense. Oh my God, the words this big. Rice paper. You had to read all those pages and comprehend it and try to do a story. Oh my gosh. Anyway, that was a lot. So what is toxic? Well, dumping your garbage along the side of the road, that's unsightly. It's unusual. It's, that's garbage. Has anyone had emotional garbage spilled on them by someone they know or so? And have you been able to see what that is, and even know, and say, oh, I can see, even though, oftentimes for the, when we have relationships with a narcissist or a psychopath, oftentimes we have very idealized vision of them, very idealized, and then a degraded image of self. So that's just sort of how the relationship, the belief gets held, fostered, reinforced, and then becomes rote. It becomes a belief. So if that is reinforced long enough, it'll become a belief of yours. So in other words, if you've been reinforced by for a long period of time, you will then, that will be your truth. I am untrustworthy, or I am unlovable, or I am whatever, irritated. I am too whatever. So, but this is you. So what is toxic to you? And take time for that. Getting to know this. Getting to know you. Getting to know what you feel is toxic. Is it being yelled at? Is it having, what is toxic? Being punched? What's toxic? This is all up to you. An oil spill that kills wildlife for 20 ocean miles, that's toxic. So it, you can see what it does. It's harmful to life. Someone didn't have it all together, and who else has to pay the price? So if anyone still want to pay the price for, in fear and lack of self-trust, so you have to look at the cost, especially of your feeling and your B state. This is not a dress rehearsal. This is, eventually you'll want to find what is toxic, and when these toxic behaviors come up, and they will, okay, and they'll feel within you, toxic fear within you. You have negative self-body issues. That means you've let someone else's judgment of beauty rule over you. Well, you've allowed that. So this is emotional checks and balances. So you really have to understand the power of, if there's toxic, okay, and what you know to be toxic. Get really familiar with this list. Maybe you already know it, okay? And then emotional check and balance. So when you see it coming, well, you already have it on your list. So if someone is cutting you off in conversation, they don't give you a chance, okay? Check. And what do you do when here it comes? Check. Do you snap your fingers? You need to do a behavior so that you acknowledge it, and then you establish trust. So you have to get some separation, what they call distinction, which means You can see, there it is. That's what I mean. This is what I'm talking about. This is where I've been fooled before. This is where I got walked over. This is where I got dragged into a fight. This is the crossroads. You know, let's not make this mistake junction. Let's make this triumph junction, okay? And make this to be your new truth, because the problem, why it's so difficult to let go of an abuser, because oftentimes you feel that they control your reality, control your truth, and you don't have that mechanism within to have the whole, the gestalt. See, they don't give you that, so you don't experience it. So how can you have it if you have not experienced it? So that's why you have to go and experience. You have to have the recovery date. You have to have the emotement. You have to have the experience. If you've ever been to Grand Canyon, holy guacamole. If you want to do something good for yourself, plan a good trip and see some natural wonders of the world. I mean, do some, watch some wonder. I mean, start planning, start writing, start scheduling. I know, I trust. In me, I trust. And have a trust jar. This bowl right here, if this is my trust jar. What do you put in? Do you put $1, a $5, a $10, a $20? Your trust jar, when you back it up and you trust yourself and you have security, maybe you're just putting little rose petals in there. Maybe you're putting promise tickets. I promise I'll buy myself a hammer and a saw, and I'll make myself a table for outdoors. I mean, it is time to channel your energy and get it out of the toxic, okay? There is so much coming up now. We're going to be seeing, okay, not only do we hear about everything going on in Russia, but, there's a lot of really checks, and things are coming where we're going to have to stand up for the environment, because no one can stand up for it. And so, checks and balances for yourself. So what's the text? Here they go yelling, walking over you. And then balance. So what do you do? Do you go quiet? Do you go, do you hold your hand like this? Do you hold your hand like this? Do you hold your stomach? Do you stroke your head? Do you have a tapping sequence? Some people have a tapping thing that they do. Part of healing. People study EFT, some sort of tapping. I personally haven't done that. I do know that tapping, like I trust, and then you say this and you tap like your heart, or there's other places, I trust, and you tap, and you literally, they have certain energy points where you literally like tap this into yourself. So you can look at that. This is very important for you. You guys are important. And chances are you've probably put yourself way last at the back of the, list for importance, or at least for how you feel about yourself. So it's okay for you to have trust. It's okay for you to have. It's okay for you to be defined by the positive and a new way of relating that's going to feel different to yourself. Your behaviors are going to look different. You're going to change your scheduling. You might even find a vast change of your interests. You might find that you need to do more writing, or you might need to do some more meditating, or listening to classical music or ocean sounds on YouTube with beautiful, sunny, maybe you live in a very dark, dismal climate right now in the winter of the season, and it's getting very gloomy, seasonal affective disorder. You can find here on YouTube, also, I've talked about this before. You can go search some of the most beautiful French coasts. I mean, some of the most beautiful Caribbean, and these wonderful channels have gone out there and they videotaped just hours and hours of oceanfront. I mean, you can put this up on your TV. It's like having a hotel room window. I mean, do these things for yourself. This is called self-care. Guys and gals, men need this too. Although the results, you might find doing different ones. You might say, well, I want to learn to clean my fireplace, or I want to learn how to build a brick pizza oven, or I want to learn how to build a nightstand, or I want to learn computers, or I want to learn clay or painting or poetry or reading or something. So playing an instrument, just playing a sport, anything that you can do to kind of stretch yourself and will help you with your checks and balances and your trust. Because so many times people throw themselves into the fire pit. They throw themselves in, they just go in deep, into the narcissist. They feel they've done more for them than they would ever do for themselves, in many ways, meaning that they have self-sacrificed. So when that happens, I want you to check and then balance. So here comes the unnatural need, the trigger. Okay, we call that a trigger. It's called a trigger, emotional trigger or something. Oh, I don't have anything to wear. Oh, I don't have anything to eat. Oh, I don't have anywhere to go with anyone. Okay, check, balance. Okay. Oh, why don't I restyle what I have? Why don't I get rid of all the things that are clutter? How can I remove anything that is not serving me and make a goal to throw away at least 27 things every day for 9 days, and make a goal and just get this going. And then, things will start happening for you. Things will start getting easier. Self-trust will show its head. Belief, your strength, and you might go, oh gosh, I don't know if I can handle this. It might crumble down again. Those are just your old fears, your old ramblings, just having their way with you again. No, thank you, ramblings. You're not going to have your way with me. I've got check and balance. So the balance, they're yelling at you. They expect you to answer. Well, what are you going to do? And they go, hello? Are you listening? And you just let them ramble. And you don't have to be afraid. Just let them. You don't have to react. They're not an emotional reflex hammer. Boing, boing, boing. Every time they do something, you do something. No. This is called responsibility. And this is, oh my gosh, peace and harmony. I've never learned this before. And I'm in my 30s. It's okay. Some people on this channel in their 60s, 70s, older, okay, it's okay, don't worry about it. How to respond and not be reactive. See, if you're responding, it's coming from in here. If you're reacting, your throat, people are hoarse, they've thrown, they're yelling a lot, they're engaging a lot of fighting, you're overriding your own balance. You're pushing. And so know your boundaries and standards. And then find out what brings you energy or lack of energy during the day. Checks and balances. Hey, when I had that little packet of emergency C, that orange, and then in the almond milk, it made like a creamsicle, and that gave me a lot of energy. Check and balance. I was very hungry. I needed something healthy and strong. And I took that. It's got the, calcium for the bones. Check and balance. Other things that you're doing for your emotional and physical well-being. What other products do you have that you can just get rid of and throw out? Things that are drying out your skin, drying out your hair. You're not getting a clean shave, guys, or you're getting too much of a beard or whatever, not enough of a beard. You just need to change up. Get some different things going that are more emotionally satisfying in areas where you didn't think it. For example, like your shower or your routine, your everyday. This is a great place for you to have a pattern interrupt. Is in your bath routine. So I've always been interested in sort of the natural and getting away from the chemical. The plants are cheaper than alcohol and beta, whatever. So you're going to pay a little bit more, but it doesn't mean you can't afford it. So, for example, people do all sorts of different things. What I found you know, to bring more natural in it and detox. So like, for example, I was going to show you this. I got this at a expo. It's called Ibu Veda. I've almost used it up. But this is an oil, okay? IBU Ayurveda. Okay, Ibu Ayurveda. You don't have to get this one. This is just an example. But it's an oil, you know, I don't know if you can see it, but and it has a nice scent, and you can put this in your hair. This will make your hair thicker, it'll make it grow, it'll stop it from breaking. This you can use all over your body. Aveda has another one that I love. It's called Dry Remedy. So this one I got for free, and I'm still using it after about a year. You can use like a couple quarter size and put it all over, guys and girls. There's this one, Dry Remedy by Aveda, which smells really good. You can also use like any of the other castor oils. I was going to bring you guys this to show. Oh no, this is jojoba. I was making a product. As you know, jojoba is really good. I was making a new product development. As you know, if you've been with me for some time, I'm really into innovation, new product development, and, you know, I've all that kind of thing. So I'm working kind of some things on my own, and that's why I have some of these materials for my own projects. So I kind of delve into those areas. So you can find there's going to be a well of energy for you once you kind of find your passion and you have the I trust. So, and, you know, and then I trust I can learn and understand another life instead of fear or living under this victimhood, you know, and so, and then trust the process. Okay. Trust the process. The process is going to be ongoing. It's going to evolve, and you're not alone. There's other people here. There's other people around. Not enough people, especially if you go to get therapy, or, you know, oftentimes people don't know really what all this is like. So sometimes it's good to have support groups. You might find that you would like to start a support group, or start a sort of a therapy group, or start, you know, some more of this structure for yourself. So checks and balances, meaning when the toxic happens, what are you going to do? Are you going to go in and they put up a duke? Are you going to put up a duke? Or what are you going to do? Checks and balance. You're going to go calm, you're going to relax, and you're going to just say, I'm relaxed to yourself, while they go on and have a rage fit. And, you know, that's on them. It's not on you. You are not the causative factor. See, so many people, if you've had this, especially around, you know, for your formative years, in your teenage years, your youth, you know, I'm the cause of all this, you know, that's happening. And so people then feel that they don't attract anything better because they've been treated and conditioned to believe this way, that they only attract that which is negative, or that which doesn't fit. They haven't worked on checks and balances. So it's important for you to get to know this and to not be ashamed to say, I know this and I know better now. But see, the narcissist would never, or that person kind of who people are usually always trying to win their approval and trust, and then your own approval and trust isn't good enough. Do you see how the switch gets flipped? You have to flip it back to yourself so that the power is within, and that's okay. And get used to that. Oh, but peace and harmony, I don't know. Who would I be if I don't worry or do this or that? Well, who do you want to become? Do you want to become, you know, and then these things. And even if it's just something simple, I just want to feel good. Okay, great. Then let's keep track what makes you feel good. Okay, let's keep track. Write it down. There's a book up there called Self-Care. And I've got this massage. Oh, God. I've got this cushion here that, of course, as you know, this gives you a really great massage on your head and the back of your neck. Oh. I'm going to reach this, so I do have This is a great book. It's called Self-Care. It's a day and night reflection journal. And this is what the inner pages look like. It says record and reflect. So you can, for today, so just look at, what activities have you done today that have given you self-trust? And write these down. So like in your exercise today, what activities have given you self-trust? Making coffee, reading the paper, doing my job, checking my balances, making sure I'm protected, checking the house, these are things that I have self-trust, okay? And, and then where do I feel a lack of trust? And then how can I, in situations, and how can I bring that in? And how can I have a vision of this where I can respond in like energy, and I can trust, and I trust, and I trust. And then getting to know that, and then building upon that, because once you have trust, then you'll have a better foundation for interests, for decision making, for relationships. And then you'll be able to negotiate and handle things better from that. So it might take some time, a little bit of time, but the more that we keep track, the more the results, the more we write down, the more we get done, the more we see. And you might need to sort of get a little bit of motivation. Get yourself some paper, some markers, guys and girls, and write this down. You don't have to be ashamed that you're rewiring yourself for happiness. My goodness, what a wonderful thing to be able to do, and to recognize that you have the skill and the talent, and just being a human being, that is you already do have power, but you haven't been utilizing it, tapping into it, knowing about it, discussing it, living it. So we're going to have to do these things in order to get the rewards, to get the results, to get the strength, and then to have the relationship the way you want it, to have your emotional state the way you want it, to have your health, what you're consuming, whatever it is, your job, your income, your outlook, how you're nourishing yourself, what you're doing to actually care for the environment, or something else that you might find passionate for. And people are looking for people like you. So you might as well embrace that truth, and then don't be afraid to dispel the fear that might have dwarfed you for so long. This is your buddy, Peace and Harmony, with you here today, and I hope that these videos do help. Please share, please subscribe, and for goodness sake, please donate for more great tools, videos, discussion, and support. Peace out. Have a beautiful day. You got this. I trust.